Let's get into it. If you want to see it, what you can do is go into your ads manager and then click over to columns. Click over here to compare attribution settings. That will open up this selection over here. And then you can check off under advanced option, incremental attribution. It takes a tiny amount of time, but it can open up a huge amount of insight. The ones that Alfred and I typically use are going to be 1-day click, 7-day click, and then incremental attribution on accounts that it has rolled out to so far. And as you can see in this example over here, it can be helpful to have these different attribution models to inform us in our decision making. We can see here with 1-day click, there was 2,200 in sales reported for this specific ad for this time range in the last 7 days. On 7-day click, however, we have 4K, almost 4,100 in sales attributed. And then when it comes to the incremental reporting, it's 2,356. It's a pretty meaningful difference depending on which one you use to make your decisions with. And the most important thing is to look at this first one over here, which is the default setting that most accounts use, which is 7-day click, 1-day view. And you can see here, 7-day click, 1-day view, the very default that Meta gives you is much higher than the incremental attribution. When you add this column in, what you're seeing here is what Meta's modeling proposes as the causative relationship between your ads and your sales. Let's unpack what that means with some simplicity and tease apart the difference. And the main difference here to unpack is that attribution, so getting credit for something, is not the same thing as impact. And it's very similar and in the same direction of the phrase that most of us know, which is correlation is not causation. Just because something happens close together, it doesn't mean that it caused one another. So what Meta is trying to solve with this new column and the incremental attribution reporting is the question of, would this sale have happened without the ad being shown? Because if the ad, or rather the sale, would have happened even if the ad wasn't being shown, then credit like this over here may not really deserve the credit that it's getting. And I'm going to unpack these nuances more right now. But if you want our help and our personal help with making sense of this in your business while boring the systems that we use to scale without stress and without micromanaging things, check out the first link in the description below, and we'd be happy to have you. To make this more clear, here's an example we can relate to. Imagine you are standing outside a grocery store right over here, and you work for the grocery store. In this case, it's Erewhon, which if you're from LA, you probably know what it is. And if you're not, you might also know that they are extremely expensive. I've been there before and we easily spent a few $100 just for breakfast on a few of us. And let's imagine that you are handing out $10 off coupons. Here is how each attribution model would interpret a shopper's purchase. And by each attribution model, I'll go through a few of them. I'll go through 7-day click, 1-day view. Rather, that's this one over here, which is the default that you see when you don't enable these columns. We'll also go through 1-day click, 7-day click, and then incremental. So let's start off with 7-day click, 1-day view over here, since that's the default that you're probably using right now. And the example is that you're standing here, you're handing out $10 coupons, and here's a shopper coming by. So they walk by you, they walk past, they don't take the coupon, they don't talk to you, and they may not have even known that you were there, but you guys were close in proximity. So they come to the store, they go inside, and they buy. This right here is an example of one-day view, which is half of the equation of the default setting called 7-day click, one-day view. So this is a one-day view portion. And as a recap, this is what happens. They walk by you, they don't take the coupon, and they buy on the same day. Let's talk about the second part of it, which is the 7-day click part. So we have another shopper over here. She walks by, she talks to you, she takes the coupon, and then what she does is she actually goes home. She doesn't go in the store that day to buy. But 5 days later, she goes back to the store, uses the coupon, and makes a purchase. This is considered 7-day click. In this case, Meta would give you the full credit for both of these purchases. So if this first guy over here came in and spent $50 on avocados at Erewhon, and she came in after taking her coupon 5 days later, within that 7-day period of interacting with you, and she spent, let's say, $200 on smoothies and supplements, you would be given the credit for a total of $250 worth of sales. And you can see where the problem is in this scenario. In the scenario with this guy over here, there was no interaction, and it was very unlikely that because he was in proximity with you, that you had an influence on the $50 that he spent. And then when we look at her purchase, she did use the coupon. However, it's not for certain that the reason that she bought is because you gave her that coupon or you interacted with her on that day. There's a lot of other reasons why she might have bought. Maybe she came back to buy when she did because she, let's say, ran out of her supplements. Maybe she came back to buy because she's throwing a party. So even though there was an interaction between both of you, and even though she used the coupon, it doesn't necessarily mean that you deserved the credit for the purchase. There are other reasons that she may have spent the $200 that she spent. So that covers the explanation of what 7-day click, one-day view incorporates. The 4,500 here in sales over the last 7 days for this specific ad over here does attribute 4,500 collectively between one-day view and 7-day click. But just because it was attributed this amount doesn't mean the ads caused the conversions, which the attribution column is supposed to fix or work in the direction of fixing and supporting us with better decisions. And before we move on to the next attribution setting to talk about and explain, I can actually scroll up over here to look at an even more informative example with some other data. Same thing, it's just one ad. It just has a little less sales, but it includes the one-day view column over here. What we can see is the 7-day click, one-day view number that's default from Meta. If you add up the one-day view attribution and you add up the 7-day click attribution, it totals to the 7-day click, one-day view number. And in this case, with this account, or rather this specific ad that we are analyzing, it's a good thing that one-day view is not a huge proportion of this number that's being reported, because you can see how with this example over here, one-day view can inflate the numbers quite meaningfully if a lot of that type of attribution is happening, which is why it's important to tease it apart so that you can make better, more profitable decisions. The next one up, we have one-day click. And one day click is a relatively simple one to understand. So similar scenario, we can have someone walking by and they come by, and in this case, we've got to grab a coupon. So they take the coupon from you, you might have a bit of a chat, and then right here within 24 hours, they go inside of the store and they make their purchase. In this case, what they might be doing is coming in and spending $300 on some really nice organic meat, organic vegetables, and premium alkaline water, spending $300 on their trip. So in this case, what would happen is you would be attributed that $300 sale. But again, there is that nuance of if they were on their way to the store to spend all that money anyway, how causative is this coupon and in the interaction that you had with them in driving their decision to make a transaction with the store? It's possible that it was very influential, and it's possible that the influence you had on them might have taken them from originally wanting to spend maybe $50 at the store to suddenly spending $300 on their trip because of whatever you said to them, or because of the coupon and the offer and the advertising that you did to them. This one, just for clarity, we will label as one day click. And to bridge the analogy and theory back to practicality, that is what this 2239 represents. It counts someone who clicked the ad and made a purchase within 24 hours. And then when it comes to 7-day click, we already covered that over here with her scenario where she walked by you, went home, and then on her 5th day or so, decided to come back, use a coupon, and make her purchase. Again, bridging theory and the analogy to practicality of the actual numbers. And we can scroll up to this one over here for consistency, the 4,091 in sales here. The attribution here is that the window includes purchases that happen up to a week after someone clicked on the ad. And the caution, again, is we don't know how much the ad influences the purchase, because the $4,000 in sales over here, how much of that would have just happened anyway without seeing the ads? And that is where the column or the setting of incremental attribution is resourceful in giving us more information to work with. This column over here in this model is an estimate of the true lift. And the definition that I like to use for that, just for simplicity, is what purchases were actually caused by the ad. Because as you're investing your money into ads, just like we are, what we care about, of course, is spending our money on stuff that makes us money back, and not just numbers on a screen that the platform is telling us. What Meta is trying to do here with its model is it looks at people who saw the ad and compares them to similar people who didn't based on internal lift tests, I'm assuming. And if Meta believes the ad made a difference, then it assigns credit. And the expectation to hold is that it's likely going to be a lower number than the default 7-day click, 1-day view, because it's supposed to be a more honest representation of causation and impact as opposed to credit and attribution. Again, going back over here, we have to remember that attribution and credit are not the same thing as impact. Correlation is not causation. And the big question is, would the sale have happened without the ad being shown? In the case of this data over here, on the ad spend that was used to generate these sales, what Meta is saying is that $23.56 in revenue would not have happened if the ads were not seen. And if we look over to the ROAS numbers, we can see how much of a difference it makes. When you look at 7-day click, 1-day view, you see 3.61. When you look at 1-day click, it's 1.81. And then when you look at 7-day click, it's still pretty high, 3.3. And then incremental is showing a 1.9. And you can see why that's going to be really important and informative in your decision making. How you handle and how you make decisions around a 1.9 is likely going to be very meaningfully different than how you handle a 3.3 or a 3.6. In the case of this brand over here, a 1.9 incremental, totally fine. Great to scale, great to keep budgets high, but with a different margin profile, 1.9 might be losing money versus a 3.61, which will probably tell you to scale. I'd say that incremental conversions is one of the best upgrades that we've seen with Meta in the last several years for getting closer to what's actually working. You can use third-party attribution tools like Triple Whale and Northbeam and Hyros, but those aren't for incrementality. Those are for attribution. And the important thing to remember is that this column and this setting by Meta is still a model. It's modeled with their data and their processes, which means that it's not a mirror. It's not a reflection of what's actually happening. It's an approximation, which is why we don't use it in isolation. We don't make decisions just based off the data that we see here. We make decisions instead based on patterns. What we see in the incremental column, what we see in 7-day click and 1-day click, and the Shopify revenue. And of course, our daily tracking either in spreadsheets or you can feel it in the bank account. There's a word that I think accurately represents the process that most of us have to use because none of it's a perfect science, and that is triangulation. You try to triangulate the data that you have access to. In this case, we have 1-day click, 7-day click, 7-day click, 1-day view, and now, thanks to the rolling out of this new setting, incremental. But we don't trust in any one single data point. Our role still requires triangulation. And on top of that, there's nuance that's to be had when it comes to the full picture of the account. An example of that is, let's say the 1.9 over here is actually cutting it really close. Not for this brand, but for another brand, let's say, that is running at a 1.9 on this ad, and account wide, they need to hit, let's say, a 2.5. The decision to continue running this may not be made just on this ad in isolation, because the 1.9 on this particular ad could be driving the top of funnel when it comes to building awareness and custom audiences that other ads in the ad account then leverage to convert. So we don't recommend committing to just this one column. Instead, we recommend adding it to your process. Use it as a check, a grounding force, a way to see through the flattery of really nice numbers and moving closer to the truth. It won't tell you everything, and it shouldn't be the only thing you make decisions with. But with this extra added information, it should help you make fewer expensive guesses. The incremental attribution column and setting doesn't give you the perfect truth, but it does give you better direction. And in this game, direction compounds. The closer you get to understanding what's actually working and actually generating sales and profit, the easier it becomes to let go of what isn't. The goal is to stop scaling noise and to start investing in signal the best that we can, and to give yourself better data to work with. It might not always give you the information and confirmation of what you want to believe, such as in this case, but it'll help you make decisions that will protect your profit and actually grow the business. And if you want our personal help with making sense of applying the data you see from these attribution windows in your specific business, check out the first link in the description below. And now that you know how to measure performance for more profitability, you can feel good about putting in the work to load in ads to ensure they're making you sales and not just taking credit. So watch this video next and you'll see how to build an AI agent that takes your winning ads to scale them further.